My wife loves me very much, and she almost got hurt for my sake. I vowed to treat her well, and in order to provide her with a better life, I worked hard to earn money. During the day, I worked my main job, and at night, I took on 3 part-time jobs. One day, I suddenly discovered that my wife was generously spending money on other men at a party, laughing and chatting happily. At that moment, I realized that she had actually been pretending to be poor all along. I work at a counter in a shopping mall. During the day, I work hard, and in the evening, I take a part-time job at a restaurant washing dishes and cleaning up. My motivation to strive comes from my wife. This morning before I left, she even prepared breakfast for me. Seeing me gobbling down a large steamed bun, she smiled warmly, gently patting my back, and said, "Charlie Chung, take a sip of water and eat slowly. You still have 3 left, no need to rush." I gratefully responded, "Thank you." Then I continued to eat the steamed buns in big bites, occasionally drinking water and checking the time on my phone. It was already 6 o'clock. I was about to miss the only 1 yuan bus of the morning. As I rushed outside, I heard my wife comforting me, "Charlie, if you miss that bus, just take the 2 yuan air-conditioned bus. Don't worry about saving money." When I squeezed onto the crowded old bus, my thoughts were still with Sophie's song. My wife truly loves me. She can't bear to spend 2 yuan on the bus, but she lets me spend an extra yuan to enjoy the air conditioning. There was a time when she almost hurt her feet for my sake. I held onto the handrail on the bus tightly, enduring the pressure from the old man behind me, and secretly vowed to work harder so my wife could live a better life. The restaurant tonight was incredibly lively. I was called to place the order 39 times and had to carry drinks 20 times, all while apologizing to drunken patrons to avoid any trouble. After a long period of busyness, my legs were so tired that I could barely lift them. Taking advantage of the supervisor's momentary distraction, I leaned against the wall to catch my breath and gently rubbed my lower back. When I looked up, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of me, causing me to freeze in surprise. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I might have seen it wrong. In the center of the hall, a woman was surrounded by a crowd of people. Is that my wife, Mary Shu? She is now wearing a glamorous evening gown, conversing confidently in the crowd, with a proper smile on her face, exuding an air of sophistication. But how can this be? Mary is just a girl from an ordinary family. When we got married, she felt very sad about not having any dowry, and tears wouldn't stop flowing. I comforted her, saying, "It's all right. Being poor now doesn't mean we will always be poor." I didn't mind these things. With tears in her eyes, Mary said, "Charlie, I'm so sorry. I have no ability, no education, and no dowry. I'm just an abandoned orphan. When we got married, I couldn't even afford a simple silver ring, so I had to use this soda can tab to exchange with you. But you still chose to marry me. I really don't know how lucky I am to have met you. Charlie, I love you. I will always treat you well." The scene back then is still unforgettable to me. The situation in front of me has left me feeling puzzled. Perhaps I am just too exhausted from work. I smiled self-deprecatingly. After all, our country has a large population, and many people look alike. Perhaps I really overreacted. When the supervisor called out to me, I immediately returned to my work. As soon as the supervisor asked me to go to the luxury lounge to deliver something, I pushed the door open and my eyes widened in surprise. Indeed, my wife was right there. She was standing in a prominent spot, holding a glass of champagne, chatting with someone next to her, and wearing a smile on her face. I was momentarily surprised. She was hiding in the corner, trying to rub her eyes. She was still there. After rubbing them again and blinking, I realized it really was my wife, Mary. I gazed in her direction, confused, unable to understand how she had ended up here. Tonight's banquet has a very high standard, attended by people who are either wealthy or of high status. Upon entering, guests must have their names checked against the list. Looking around, I see many well-known figures who frequently appear on television and in magazines. Mary has neither money nor background. How could she possibly be connected to these important people? But then, I saw her calmly walk towards the sofa in the lounge area. I was stunned by her legs. He walks steadily and powerfully, and he's in great condition. Last night, just before falling asleep, we snuggled in bed and whispered to each other. I told her, "My dear, I want to make a lot of money so that you can live in a big house, drive a nice car, and have a life even better than what we have now." And I also want to heal your leg, so you won't feel insecure anymore. I particularly emphasized the words better and heal the leg, gently placing her leg in my arms to help soothe her. She gently kissed me and advised, "Honey, you don't have to push yourself so hard. It pains me to see you like this. I don't want you to struggle so much." After a moment of silence, she showed a look of guilt and disappointment on her face, then looked down and said to me, "Honey, I'm sorry. It's all because I'm too poor that you have to work so hard to support our family." I comforted her for a while until she felt happy again. However, the current situation was a sharp contrast to the warmth we shared last night. My throat felt dry, and it felt as though an invisible hand was tightly gripping my throat, making it hard to breathe. As a restaurant staff member, I wore a mask and a uniform. People were coming and going all around me, and no one noticed me, the little server. Mary didn't even glance this way, let alone recognize me. To figure out what was going on, I lowered my head and quietly slipped behind the sofa in the break area. Mary was sitting across from a well-dressed woman, who smiled and asked her, "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." Mary twirled her wine glass absent-mindedly and replied, "I just needed to get some fresh air. I've been cooped up in that small place all day. I was about to lose it." The woman chuckled lightly and said, "You seem to be having so much fun that I thought you wouldn't want to go back. Do you really have a crush on Charlie? Are you really interested in him?" Mary scoffed. "Interested? Are you insulting me? He's just a stray dog on the street, someone I play with when I'm bored. He's not worth mentioning at all." The people around her were surprised, saying, "Miss Shu actually spent so long playing with him, and almost made us believe it. Indeed, looking at where you live is truly surprising. I thought you had found true love, and were trying to modestly charm a handsome guy." Mary chuckled lightly, casually leaning on the sofa as she slowly spoke. In reality, she had just made up a little story, and she didn't expect that man to actually believe it. He looked at her every day, hoping to save up enough money to give her a better life. Haha, do you all find that amusing? As soon as she finished her sentence, the elegantly dressed women around her burst into laughter in unison. Is it really him? No way. Even if he worked his entire life, he wouldn't be able to afford the bracelet in your hand. Ha ha ha, that's just too funny. It feels like all the noise around us has vanished. I was enveloped in silence, unable to see the woman in front of me clearly. Laughter echoed in my ears, and it felt as if my heart was being sliced open repeatedly, blood flowing freely, making it hard to breathe. It was utterly unbelievable. The woman who shared my bed every night turned out to be a cold-blooded and heartless person. Not only had she deceived me completely, but she also took pride in toying with me. I once thought she truly loved me, but I now realize that it was just a delusion of a poor man like me. She hardly liked me at all. To her, I was nothing more than an insignificant stray pet she could casually toy with when boredom struck. She had been deceiving me all along. The woman in the evening gown who first engaged me smilingly said that if it weren't for Henry Sue falling in love with someone else, you wouldn't have intentionally sought out a lowly man like Charlie to provoke him. I heard that Mary Shu, after learning about your marriage, is on the verge of a breakdown. He has already broken up with his girlfriend and will likely come to you soon to reconcile. Mary replied calmly that as long as he was willing to admit his mistakes and come back to her, she would be able to get a divorce immediately. The woman in the evening gown curiously asked how she planned to get rid of Charlie. Mary narrowed her eyes slightly, thinking to herself that she absolutely couldn't let him know her true identity. Otherwise, he would keep a close watch on her, and escaping would become impossible. The people around her all expressed their agreement. She thought to herself that she really couldn't stand his loud-mouthed, opportunistic rural mother. Every time, she would pry into these matters, and her insatiable attitude was quite off-putting. If my mom knew about my background, she would probably camp out at my doorstep every day, like a debt collector. Just thinking about it makes me uncomfortable. My heart felt numb with pain. That rich second generation not only fabricated a story about being an orphan and claimed to have been abandoned by his family, but he also remained infatuated with his first love. In order to win back his first love, he could leave me at any moment. I covered my mouth and laughed silently. In fact, Mary was right, my mother really is a money-loving countrywoman. But what she doesn't know is that when my mother first learned I wanted to marry Mary, she strongly opposed it. She said, "Charlie, I don't oppose your marriage, but at the very least you should find someone with a decent job and good health. If you're really going to marry her, Then don't call me mom anymore. I told my mom, I've never seen a son like you. To convince my mom, I knelt down and begged her, promising that Mary and I would always be filial to her. We would work hard, and our lives would definitely get better. We would also send her a monthly allowance. In the end, my mom reluctantly agreed, but under the condition that Mary would pay her 50,000 yuan as a token of gratitude. I frowned and discussed with Mary whether we could gather some money first. Didn't you say you had saved some money to buy home appliances? I suggested. Otherwise, let's put off buying the car and transfer the money to my mom first. We can discuss our matter later. Mary furrowed her brows and replied, Charlie, it's not that I don't want to lend you the money, but I have a friend who's in a bit of trouble, and I've already lent him 20,000 as an emergency fund. I understood my mom's character. She definitely wouldn't talk if there was no money involved. Seeing Mary's worried expression, I couldn't help but let out a sigh. I made up my mind to put aside my pride and ask my classmates and colleagues for help. After a long while, I finally managed to gather 50,000 yuan. I even had to request an advance on 3 months' salary. It was truly hard-earned money. I glanced at Mary, just as I was preparing to leave. Someone then asked her, Charlie has been so good to you. Don't you feel even a little moved by that? I also want to know the answer. For the sake of this little family, I work hard every day. Doesn't she feel even a hint of compassion or gratitude? The indifferent voice behind me made me lose all my hope. How could a man like this even be compared to Henry? There was both coldness and evident disdain in Mary's tone. At this moment, my heart completely sank. Due to my irregular schedule over a long period, my stomach was in excruciating pain. Yet, no matter how much it hurt, it couldn't compare to the remarks she made about me today. If she had any respect for me at all, she wouldn't have demeaned me so shamelessly in front of others, showing me no consideration. As I passed by the pile of champagne, I truly wanted to splash the drink all over her and confront her about why she treated me this way, but I didn't have the courage to do it, because I have nothing. She comes from a wealthy family and can return anytime. She doesn't want to pretend to be poor. If she truly wanted to target me, I wouldn't be able to fight back at all. I covered my stomach, wanting only to leave this place of troubles, perhaps due to my inner turmoil. I accidentally knocked over someone else's wine glass, spilling the drink all over myself. The glass fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. I was about to bend down to apologize when someone slapped me hard across the face. Immediately afterward, I heard a voice from above cursing, Are you blind? Can't you see my expensive suit? How dare you bump into me? Kneel down and apologize. A slap came at me, and I felt the world spin. Took a while for me to calm down. The humiliation and anger in my heart intertwined. The foreman and the event manager came over one after another to apologize. I closed my eyes and whispered an apology, but out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Mary approaching. My heart suddenly leaped into my throat, terrified that she would recognize me. I instantly turned my head and hid behind the person in charge. Mary didn't look at me. Instead, she walked directly toward the man who had hit me and gently asked, Henry, are you all right? I stood frozen in place, feeling as though I had been struck by lightning. This man in the expensive suit, who had slapped me, is Henry? Mary's first love, which has been lingering in her heart. I tried to control my gaze, lowering my head even further. A severe stomach ache was tormenting me, and my face was pale, unable to be concealed even by my mask. So far, I had only eaten the 3 white steamed buns from this morning, along with 2 cups of cold water. Mary glanced at me with visible irritation, signaling for me to go away. I clenched my fists, holding back my tears, and slowly walked outside. Behind me, I heard Henry pleading with Mary. He said gently, Mary, I've lost 6 million on my recent investments. If my family finds out, they might cancel my inheritance. Could you lend me some money for now? Before he could finish, Mary took out her phone and started operating it. I've transferred 7 million to you. If that's not enough, just let me know. I turned my head in a daze and saw Henry happily leaning beside Mary. He kissed her face a few times, held her hand, and gratefully said, Thank you, Mary. I always knew you understood me best. I struggled to suppress the emotions surging within me as I recalled the time not long after we had just gotten married. One night, I suddenly felt a severe stomach ache that was incredibly unbearable, and sweat beaded on my forehead. I wanted to go to the hospital, but I only had 300 yuan in my account. I weakly looked at Mary, hoping she could find a way out. She held me tightly, tears in her eyes, constantly apologizing. "I'm so sorry. I'm really useless. I can't even afford the hospital bills. What should we do? What should I do?" Seeing her tear-streaked face and her faded nightgown, I remembered the good things she had done for me in the past, like buying me sour plum soup and an electronic watch. Even though she only bought 1 bottle of water, she made sure I had some to drink. I tried to grasp her hand to comfort her, saying, "Don't worry, dear. There will always be a way." In the end, I shamelessly borrowed money from a friend. When we went to the hospital, the doctor said she had acute appendicitis, and if we had waited any longer, it would have been serious. At that time, she saw me in such pain, yet she was unwilling to lend me even a few hundred for the medical expenses. Now, whenever her first love makes a request, she can effortlessly transfer 7 million. This contrast makes me feel that my past efforts were simply a joke. I dragged my tired and aching body, stumbling out of the restaurant. The scolding voices of the manager and the head staff faded in my ears. I felt like a soulless shell, not knowing where to go, wandering aimlessly on the street. Suddenly, I tripped over some debris on the ground and fell hard. Blood poured from my knees and palms, and at that moment, I broke down. For a long time, the tears that had been suppressed finally burst forth, and I collapsed to the ground, crying uncontrollably. I couldn't understand why she had to treat me this way. Memories flooded back like a tide, taking me 3 years ago. At that time, Mary and I lived in the same building. Because we couldn't afford the rent, we were ruthlessly kicked out by the landlord. Out of desperation, I could only curl up in the cold stairwell, where I had set up a shabby wooden bed. That day, when I was going upstairs, she grabbed the corner of my shirt. In a weak voice, heavily nasal, she told me that she had a fever and hoped I would let her stay for the night. I had always been cautious and wanted to refuse her, pretending not to see her. However, after taking half a step up the stairs, my foot unexpectedly came to a stop. I turned around and saw her shivering in the cold wind, looking pitiable and somewhat frail. It reminded me of the helpless moments I had experienced in the past. In the end, I softened my heart and brought her back home. Initially, I planned to let her leave after she recovered, but her illness kept recurring, and she never fully got better. However, she was very conscientious and took on all the household chores during that time. Despite her illness, she continued to take great care of me. One night, I was working overtime sorting goods and returned home quite late. At a dark intersection on my way home, I was harassed by a group of drunkards. They tried to take everything from me, and despite my verbal resistance, they continued to close in. Just when I felt hopeless, Mary appeared. She is a delicate woman, yet she bravely rushed forward to protect me, standing in front of me and taking a blow from a drunkard. Although I wasn't hurt, her leg was left disabled because of it. From that moment on, I never brought up the idea of her leaving me again. Instead, we began to encourage each other, living together and relying on one another. Not long after, we got married. I had always dreamed of creating a loving family. Although this home is small, it is filled with warmth. Because Mary has difficulty moving, I didn't let her go out to work. Instead, I took on the responsibility of earning money to support our family and did my best to uphold our little home. I have been working hard, hoping to improve our lives a bit. However, these are nothing but my own pitiable and ridiculous fantasies. In reality, it is merely a tragedy directed by him. When I got home and saw the discounted household items in the corner, I couldn't help but recall how I had once boasted to Mary about my thriftiness. "Honey, there's a discount on paper goods at the supermarket today at 6 p.m. Look at all the things I bought." Mary praised me as well, saying, "You really are a capable person." Looking back now, the silence and smiles of that moment seemed to conceal a mocking laughter at my ignorance. I took a shower, but the water heater was broken, and I had to use cold water. The icy water washed over my wounds, causing me intense pain. Despite that, I didn't shy away. Instead, I allowed it to remind me of everything. I cleaned the house and packed all of Mary's belongings, placing them by the door. As soon as I stood up straight, my phone in my pocket started vibrating. The screen displayed the word wife, but I felt a wave of bitterness in my heart. I pressed the answer button. Mary's voice came through the receiver. "Honey, when are you coming back tonight?" Although I'm not particularly smart, I quickly realized what she was getting at. She was checking to see if I was at home so she could arrange her private meeting. I felt troubled, closed my eyes, and calmly replied that I would be working late tonight and wouldn't be back. Life has been so hard, and I have never complained, yet I faced such betrayal. On the other end of the line, Mary seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. She reminded me to drink more water and to take a break if I was tired. This insincere concern makes me uncomfortable. I felt disgusted and hung up the phone directly. If she truly cared about me, she wouldn't make me work hard day in and day out. This reasoning is actually quite simple. It's ridiculous that I'm only realizing it now. My body feels like an old appliance on the verge of breaking down. I curled up on that small sofa all night, my eyes opening and closing. Just as dawn broke, I heard the sound of a key being inserted into the lock at the door. I suddenly jumped up and walked toward the door. With a creak, it opened, and there stood Mary outside. Her eyes flickered over me, revealing a hint of surprise. Usually, after my night shifts, I would go straight to the mall. Why am I at home today? Her acting skills are quite impressive. She softly called out honey. Right now, she's still wearing the cheap clothes I picked out for her. The total for the shirt and pants barely adds up to 100 yuan. I remember at the business dinner, I was puzzled as to why she pretended to be limping. Now I understand, it's her special skill. Not only does it evoke sympathy, but it also serves as an excuse to avoid work. Truly a two-pronged approach. At that moment, I was truly moved and felt incredibly lucky to have met someone so wonderful. I vowed to treat her well for the rest of my life. Mary smiled brightly and asked why I was standing by the door, wondering if I was waiting for her to come back. I replied that I had just taken a stroll in the park, trying to adapt to this leg as soon as possible so I could go back to work and lessen her burden. I stared at her seriously, feeling as if I were seeing her for the first time. If it hadn't been for the banquet last night that made me understand everything, hearing her excuses would have definitely prompted me to rush over and hold her tightly. I had a lot of feelings inside, and I told her, "You've worked hard, all you need to do is stay at home, and I'll earn a living for us." For her, I toiled day and night. Even though my stomach was in great pain, I could only have the free instant noodles and bread offered at the mall for lunch. Dinner often got overlooked, and during hungry times, I would go straight to bed on an empty stomach, sometimes until midnight. When my colleagues asked, I had to force a smile and say I was on a diet. What was the result? She got bored and pushed me away. How could she treat me so casually? As I thought about it, tears couldn't help but flow down my cheeks. I pointed to the cardboard box at her feet and said, "I've packed all your things and put them in this box." When Mary saw me crying, she was taken aback for a moment. She seemed a bit flustered and wanted to comfort me. In that instant, I remembered the gentle and satisfied expression on her face when Henry held her. She is usually very kind to me, but that kindness feels insincere. With Henry, it is genuine. I instinctively dodged away, saying, "Don't touch me." Mary was taken aback by my reaction. She asked, "Honey, why are you crying? Is it because I'm not home and I didn't tell you in time, so you're upset?" Her eyes were red, and she looked a bit anxious. "I'm sorry, it was my mistake. I just went out for a walk to see if there were any suitable job opportunities. Seeing you work so hard truly makes me feel upset. I don't want you to worry. Please, dear, don't be angry. I promise I won't do this again. Please don't let me go, okay? Going out late at night to look for a job? You didn't consider the consequences at all." Looking at her expression, I wiped my tears and coolly asked, "Mary, do you really care about me? Do you truly see me as your husband?" She looked helpless, as if I had said something wrong. "Husband, how could you think that I don't care about you? I know deep down that I'm nothing but a complete fool." Looking at her face, my mind is filled with the disdain she showed when she said she liked me, as if I were nothing but a worthless nobody compared to Henry. I suppressed the bitterness in my heart and spread the heavy document out in front of her. It was a divorce agreement, just a signature, and everything would be settled. Mary was stunned, her gaze lingering on the divorce agreement, and she put on an innocent expression. She asked, "Honey, what do you mean by that? Why are you suddenly talking about divorce?" With tears in my eyes, I asked sarcastically, "Miss Shu or just Shu? Which do you prefer? You come from a prestigious family and are wealthy beyond measure. Do you really need me to explain the meaning of divorce?" Mary's gaze flickered for a moment, as if she wanted to continue playing dumb. "Honey, what are you talking about? What do you mean by young lady? I don't understand anything at all, she said. I looked at her face. She truly appeared confused, with a look of complete bewilderment. I really didn't understand why she insisted on continuing this act at this moment. Did she really believe that I would still trust her lies? My anger simmered within me. I pointed to the slap mark on my face and asked her firmly, "Does this mark look familiar to you?" The waitress at yesterday's banquet was actually me. I saw everything and understood it all. Do we need to continue this charade? I grabbed her glass from the cardboard box and slammed it violently against her right leg. Almost roaring, I shouted at her, "Mary, are you even human? There's nothing wrong with your body. You fraud, how much longer do you plan to deceive me? Don't worry, I figured out who you are, and I don't want to get entangled with you any longer." Mary was hit by a cup and took a step back. The cup fell to the ground and shattered instantly, with fragments scattering everywhere. Mary was taken aback, and after a moment of silence, she put on a proud demeanor. "I didn't expect you to figure out my identity so quickly. That saves me the trouble of making up excuses," she said, seeming to find the situation rather mundane. Then, she pulled out a bank card from her bag, pinching it between two fingers and handing it to me. "There's $1 million in here. Take it." I let out a cold laugh and shook my head firmly. "I don't want it. The divorce agreement clearly states that I have recorded all expenses incurred during our marriage, and you only need to reimburse me for half. I don't want anything else. Due to financial constraints, I have developed the habit of keeping detailed accounts. Ever since living with Mary, I have kept track of every single expense." Mary looked surprised and continued to test me. "Are you really sure you don't want this card?" In his eyes, a person like me who loves money would never be able to refuse a $1 million offer. But she didn't know that the reason I had worked so hard in the past was all for her, Mary. At that moment, as I faced her, a man's voice interrupted us. I turned around and saw Henry. He was very well dressed, wearing an expensive suit, and politely walked over to Mary, taking her arm. Then he cast a disdainful glance at me. I冷冷地警告他，离婚是我们2个人的事，外人没资格说3道4，更何况 Mary 早就是我的妻子，这让 Henry 非常生气，准备对我动手。He was very well dressed, wearing an expensive suit, and politely approached Mary, taking her arm. Then he shot me a contemptuous glance. I coldly warned him that the divorce was a matter between the two of us, and outsiders had no right to interfere. Moreover, Mary was already my wife. This made Henry very angry, and he was ready to take action against me. I took the initiative and swiftly slapped away his hand as it came toward me. His hand immediately swelled up, and he winced in pain. Seeing this, Mary quickly spoke up to intervene, her gaze fixed on me, as if warning me not to strike again. Henry immediately reached out to Mary, complaining about the pain, while shooting me a provoking smile. My eyes turned red, my heart ached to the point of numbness, and I anxiously urged Mary, "Since you love him so much, hurry up and divorce me." Mary seemed to find it amusing. She looked me up and down and then said, "Well, go ahead and leave. Just don't regret it." An hour later, Mary and I were standing in the hall of the Civil Affairs Bureau, and the atmosphere felt quite festive. Many couples were holding hands as they came to obtain their marriage certificates, while we were there for a divorce. Before long, our names were called. The staff repeatedly asked us if we were sure we wanted to go through with it. I looked at Mary. She was staring down at her phone, texting. I remembered that the day we came to get our marriage certificate was so quick. Back then, I was filled with joy, but now I felt a sense of hopelessness. After I signed my name, it was Mary's turn. She hesitated for quite a while, still not making a move with the pen. Then she turned to me again and asked, "Charlie, I'm asking you one last time. Are you sure you want to divorce me? Don't regret it after you leave." I found it hard to understand her meaning. I snorted coldly and replied without hesitation, "Mary, marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life." Her expression changed immediately, and then she signed her name. The moment I received the divorce certificate, I didn't spare her another glance and turned to leave. Upon returning home, I felt no emotion toward the things she no longer wanted that were left at the door. For her, those items were merely props for a play, a burden. I casually tossed them into the trash can. I had completely let go of Mary, feeling no sense of nostalgia at all. After a nap, I woke up to find the house in complete darkness, feeling utterly drained. I didn't want to cook, so I sent a message to my brother to ask him to have a meal together. During dinner, I told John Jiang about how Mary was trying to play the victim and messing with me on purpose. As soon as he heard that, he got so angry that he threw down his chopsticks and stood up. Mary is truly shameless. How could she even dare to insult you? You are being too naive. Getting a divorce is definitely the right choice, but why don't you want her money? She treated you like this. At the very least, she should give you half of the assets. I held my good friend back and explained to him that she threw a card at me with $1 million on it. But I find her so disgusting that I don't want anything from her. Are you crazy? 1 million. You say you don't want it and you really mean it? I took a sip of baijiu and shook my head. In the past, she wouldn't even part with a few hundred yuan, and now she suddenly mentions 1 million. If I accept it, I might end up trapped in the scheme she set. I've already fallen into such a pit once before. My good friend sighed, patted me on the shoulder, and after thinking about what I said, felt that I was right. Sigh, it really is a bit frustrating. I really don't want to encounter that irritating person again. If I see her again, I will definitely teach her a lesson. I smiled, but inside I felt a bit conflicted. I kept having beers and spirits, and finally, my friend pulled me back and took me home. After waking up, I adjusted my mindset. Women may disappoint me, but work won't. Someone like Mary isn't worth my tears anymore. After losing Mary, the pace of my life suddenly slowed down. I buy whatever I want to eat, and if I'm running late for work, I just take a cab. In the evening, I quit my part-time job and began to read and study for certifications. I used my time to enrich myself, and life became peaceful and comfortable. I didn't take the initiative to inquire about her news. One day, while I was driving a company vehicle to deliver goods, I unexpectedly saw Mary and Henry walking hand in hand, shopping. I took a glance and then continued driving. It's true that I no longer love him, so there are no feelings stirring in my heart. In the evening, I focused on studying at home. John's phone kept ringing. When I answered, he shouted, "Charlie, come to our hotel quickly." John was working the night shift at a 5-star hotel. I was a bit confused and asked, "What's wrong? Is something going on?" He replied urgently, "Don't ask so many questions. Just do as I say. Everyone, come quickly. There's an exciting show." By the time I reached the hotel entrance, a crowd had already gathered. Some people were taking photos with their phones, while others were filming with professional cameras. It seemed there were also a few reporters nearby. I searched for a long time but couldn't find my brother. When I looked into the crowd, I noticed Mary. Her face was twisted in distress as she refused to cooperate with the group of people interviewing and filming her. The crowd surrounded her, leaving her unable to retreat or move forward. Finally, the security team came to help her break through the crowd. I was a bit surprised. After she stormed out of the crowd in anger, she immediately got in a car and left. John came out, holding his phone and laughing so hard he could barely stand up. "You really came late. The scene just now was incredible." It was only after I watched the video that I understood what happened. It turned out that Henry had brought a female model to the hotel, while Mary was holding roses, wanting to celebrate his birthday. This led to the unexpected scene of catching someone in the act. The female model kept dodging, and all of Mary's punches landed on Henry. Eventually, unable to take it anymore, Henry got into a scuffle with Mary and even asked the female model for help. A colleague on the night shift saw the commotion and quickly reported it to a news hotline, also contacting some acquaintances in the media. After the video was sent to influencers, they rapidly shared it in various groups, and it eventually made it to the local trending topic list. After all, who wouldn't want to see the gossip of a wealthy second-generation heir acting like a love-struck fool while encountering a scandal about his first love cheating? Now, Mary has truly lost face. Everyone knows that she was betrayed by the lover she supported. I gave my good buddy a thumbs up and praised her. "You really did great. It's a cycle of cause and effect, and the retribution has come. Mary deceived me, and now she's being deceived by Henry. It's truly poetic justice." The next evening, as I arrived home from work, I noticed a shadow waiting by the door. When she heard my footsteps, the woman turned her head. It was Mary. She was holding my favorite barbecue skewers and smiling at me, saying, "Charlie, I bought these skewers that you love. Here, try some." I coldly replied, "I'm not in the mood to eat right now. Please step aside, I need to go inside." Mary's hand paused in the air. After a moment, she said, "Let's get back together. Charlie, I'll make sure you have a good life. We'll have a housekeeper at home and a dedicated car to take you around, so you won't have to work so hard anymore. I'll buy you everything you want. This rental is too small, and I'll return it tomorrow. Move in with me." I looked at Mary and found her quite strange. What she was saying didn't sound like a request. Rather, it felt more like a charity. What did she think of me? A tool at her beck and call? Just after Henry had cheated, she came to my house asking to get back together? It's truly annoying. "Mary, please stay away from me." As soon as I told her to leave, Mary's expression immediately turned sullen. She asked me what more I wanted since she had already lowered herself to ask for reconciliation. Hearing this left me both frustrated and amused. She thought that, as a rich second generation, she could come to me and I should be grateful and depend on her, right? "Mary, listen carefully. I have no feelings for you now, and I'm even somewhat annoyed. Please be sensible and stay away from my doorstep. If you dare to keep pestering me, I will call the police." Upon hearing my unwavering words, Mary abruptly dropped the barbecue in her hand and grabbed my arm. Her gaze was as if she wanted to swallow me whole. "Charlie, say that one more time." I stared straight into her eyes, each word clear and firm. "The moment I see you, I feel nauseous. Get out of my way." Mary's words left her momentarily stunned. Seizing the opportunity, I forcefully broke free and quickly opened the door to run inside. Even though I pushed her away, she still approached my mom. She brought ginseng and a big red envelope, trying to persuade my mom to convince me to remarry her. My mom immediately called me, sounding anxious, and said, "Don't be ungrateful. Hurry up and reconcile with Mary. You were the one who insisted on marrying her in the first place. Now that she's so wealthy, it would be great to be with her. In the future, our family won't have to worry about food and clothing. Since I was a child, my mother has never shown me any tenderness or patience. Whenever my studies didn't go well, she would scold and beat me, breaking several rods in the process. Now, she only seems interested in Mary's money and wants me to remarry quickly so that she can live a good life. I absolutely refuse to remarry Mary. If you keep pushing me, don't blame me for not recognizing you as my mother." I ignored the insults coming from the other end and quickly hung up, worried that Mary would continue to pester me. After discussing with John, we decided to find a temporary fake girlfriend. He immediately recommended someone we both know, Sophie. He said she would be very willing to help and that we could contact her anytime. Sophie and I were classmates in high school, and she was an excellent student. I often got beaten by my mom, so whenever I encountered a problem I couldn't solve, I would ask her for help. She has a good temper and really helped me with my studies for 2 years. I heard from my brother that she is now a senior partner at a top law firm. It's been a long time since I last saw her, and I felt a bit anxious. After some hesitation, I finally dialed her number. She greeted me warmly, and after I explained my situation with Mary, she didn't ask many questions and immediately agreed to help. After work, she came straight to find me, and we went home together. Mary was once again blocking my front door, but this time she had nothing in her hands. As soon as she saw Sophie, her gaze fixated on me, as if she was trying to see through me. She pointed at Sophie and bluntly asked, "Who is this woman?" I took Sophie's hand and calmly replied, "This is my girlfriend." She obviously didn't believe him. "You're lying to me." "Charlie, I'll ask you one more time. Who is this woman?" Mary's face darkened, and her tone was cold. "Does that lady have a vision problem?" "I'm here to help Charlie answer. I'm his girlfriend." Sophie stepped in front of me and repeated Mary's question. "No way. Charlie can only be mine." Before I could argue, Sophie spoke up again. "Fraud and infidelity. Charlie is only divorcing you and hasn't sued you because he is kind-hearted. Miss Shu, please step aside." Mary squinted her eyes and sneered, "Don't think I don't know if you're deliberately trying to irritate me." Before she could finish her sentence, I turned and gently touched Sophie's face. Sophie quickly wrapped her arms around me, and our pose appeared very intimate. "Mary, we are already divorced. My dating or remarriage is my choice and has nothing to do with you." Mary's demeanor was nearly out of control. She struggled to remain composed, shot a glance at Sophie, and sneered, "Are you really going to be with someone as unremarkable as her? How much money does she even have?" Filled with rage, I interrupted her. "Shut up. What qualifications do you have to insult my girlfriend? Mary clenched her teeth and left, feeling dissatisfied. I looked at Sophie, feeling guilty, and said to her, I'm sorry for what just happened. Don't mind what he said. Sophie responded with a smile. It's okay. I'm a lawyer and have seen many similar situations. Her words made me laugh. I thought Mary would calm down after last night. To my surprise, the next morning, just as I stepped outside, someone behind me covered my mouth, and everything went black. I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I found myself lying on an unfamiliar bed and quickly sat up. Mary approached the bedside and asked me with a smile, Are you awake? Did you sleep well, Charlie? I looked at her warily, glancing around, and asked, Where is this place? She excitedly replied, Oh, I forgot to introduce it. This is where we will be living from now on. Charlie, you won't have to live in the slums anymore. Everything you need is here. Just tell the household staff what you want to eat or wear, anytime. Mary had gone completely crazy. She actually had someone drug me and brought me to this remote villa. This is obviously a kidnapping. I was trembling with anger. Mary, I never agreed to remarry you. This is illegal. Mary replied nonchalantly, Charlie, are you still holding a grudge against me for deceiving you in the past? I have realized my mistakes and sincerely apologized. Is that enough? I won't call the police, just let me leave now. Leave? Where are you going? Mary's gaze was steadfast as she fixed her eyes on me. You are my husband and we have to live together. I responded angrily, We've already divorced. Don't call me husband. Mary, you have no right to treat me like this. Mary ignored what I was saying and grabbed my hand, trying to put a diamond ring on it. She pleaded, Charlie, let's have another wedding. Please don't leave me. I know I was wrong. You're the only one who truly loves me, and I will treat you twice as well. I looked at her and felt a chill run through me. At that moment, it was clear that her mental state was quite unstable. How could I get out of here? Should I provoke her further? Trying to stay calm, I shouted at her, Mary, is there something wrong with you? I've already told you that I don't love you anymore. Let's get a divorce and stop this entanglement. However, Mary doesn't pay any attention to what I say. You're just saying that in anger. I know you still care about me. I take a deep breath. Mary, if Henry hadn't betrayed you, you would likely be busy planning your wedding right now and wouldn't even think of me. Please let me go. Mary shook her head. She said that at first. She approached me just for fun. But later she realized she had genuinely fallen in love with me. Henry couldn't compare at all. She took a bank card from the drawer nearby and forcefully shoved it into my hand. Charlie, this card has all my savings. I truly want to give you everything. I quickly pulled my hand back, and the bank card fell to the ground. I don't want it. Mary's expression changed dramatically as she raised her hand and slapped me, angrily saying, Charlie, what are you pretending to be so high and mighty for? Don't you love money the most? Suddenly, she became nervous, knelt down beside me, and whispered, I'm sorry, Charlie. Does it hurt? I didn't mean to. She grabbed my hand and brought it to her face, urging, hit me. Just let it out. I felt something was off with her and struggled to break free, backing away. Mary, what do you really want to do? I want your love. Stop dreaming, Mary. The relationship between us has long been over. Mary cupped my face, wanting to kiss me. I had nowhere to retreat, so I softened my tone and said, Mary, please have a little dignity and let me think it over. Mary paused her action. Charlie, I'm willing to wait. I believe we can reconcile. I closed my eyes and felt very tired. You go ahead, I want to be alone for a while, I said. Mary agreed. After she left, I gradually relaxed my tense nerves. Now I needed to calm down and find a way to get out of this situation. In order to confuse Mary, I pretended to cooperate and continued with my usual routine of eating and sleeping. On the fifth night, Mary opened the door only to find the room completely empty. Charlie. I quietly stood behind her and suddenly pushed. Mary's head hit the corner of the bed, and she fainted from the pain. I seized the opportunity and quickly ran out, desperately moving forward. In this unfamiliar place, I couldn't make out the direction, but fortunately, there weren't many people around at that moment. Suddenly, I bumped into someone, and when I looked up, it was my good friend John. Ever since I disappeared, John and Sophie had been searching for me like detectives. They suspected that Mary had taken me away, but asking her directly wouldn't work. They were waiting near Mary's house every day, hoping to catch an opportunity. Moreover, They had called the police before coming. When Sophie brought the officers inside, Mary was lying on the floor, completely still. Of course, she wasn't dead. I had used the sedative she gave me against her. She had been causing such a commotion every day that it prevented her from sleeping well or eating properly. Given the impact to the head, it seemed almost impossible for me to wake up now. Sophie assured me, "Charlie, I will personally be your defense attorney. This time, we will make sure that such a villain faces justice." In the days that followed, Sophie became a frequent visitor at my home, caring for me like an old friend. We discovered that our living habits and taste in food were quite similar. On a starry night while we were taking a walk, Sophie stopped and said, "Charlie, I actually have liked you for a long time. Can you give me a chance to be your girlfriend?" I was taken aback, feeling a mix of emotions. "Sophie, I'm really sorry. I'm not ready to accept a new relationship yet, but I truly appreciate your feelings." Sophie looked at me gently, showing no hint of disappointment. "That's okay. I understand that Mary has left a deep impact on you. I'll wait until you're ready to move on." We exchanged a smile. Not long after, I decided to change my environment and move to another city to start anew. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye, and I used my savings to open a snack supermarket, fulfilling my childhood dream. As a child, I often went hungry and envied others who enjoyed snacks, dreaming that one day I could open my own snack store. On the first day of business, I was both surprised and delighted to see that my very first customer was Sophie. She smiled and handed me a business card, asking if I had considered bringing on a partner. Sophie had joined the snack supermarket I ran and often came to help out. As we spent day after day together, our relationship quietly changed, and we naturally grew closer. One day, my good friend John came to visit. While reminiscing about the past, he mentioned Mary. I only then realized that, although she was sentenced to just a year, because of the many family members, some of them did not want her to be released. As a result, right after she got out of prison, she was involved in a serious car accident. Although she was rescued, her legs were completely broken and would never recover. Moreover, the family business that she had been so proud of also greatly declined amid the disputes. A good friend wanted to show me some recent photos of Mary captured by the media. I took his phone and jokingly asked her if she would like to have some freshly grilled skewers of Xinjiang lamb. Other people's lives have nothing to do with me. I just want to enjoy the present moment with the person I love.